And now we'll explore bridge pose a little bit more. So still a sequence to do on your back from the semi-supine starting position. And without any kind of preconceptions of where your feet should be, so you can have a little play. There's lots of different ways of doing bridge, some of which we've explored in many different ways. You might be taught different things by different teachers. Bridge is very popular in lots of movement modalities, used in physiotherapy quite a lot as well. So paying attention to the position of your pelvis and any potential activation of the muscles at the front of the hips, where it feels good for you to place your feet. Where do you get a good sense of being able to support yourself through your feet? And giving yourself encouragement, to really pay attention and maybe change the position of your feet as we go along. Again, trying different things. And then placing the hands either side of the body on the floor, and you can lift, if you can, your ribs a little bit, lift your sternum to see if you can almost tuck your shoulder blades in a bit towards your spine. So if that isn't possible or doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. Just notice how your shoulder blades relate to the floor. And it can be quite interesting to do this slight back bend in your upper back. Similar to fish pose in yoga, if you know that one. So we're kind of pressing our arms into the floor a bit, mainly the elbows, to get the shoulder blades a bit closer together. And it can create a subtle opening here in the pectoral muscles, a little bit of a lift through the ribs. And then the fingers can spread on the floor, the palms spreading on the floor to copy essentially what the feet are doing, grounding through the hands and the feet. And this can be quite helpful to create more of a sense of stability and strength in your bridge pose. And then pressing down through your feet a few times, pressing down and releasing the pressure, noticing your buttock muscles contract and maybe your hips begin to lift. Feeling the lower back roll. And keeping your hands in touch with the floor, aware of your upper back, your shoulder blades. And then how would it be to start to come up a bit more? Feeling your feet and your hands and also your arms to some extent, really in touch with the ground. So our bridge has the foundations of the feet, and in this case also very much the shoulder blades and the line of the arms, the upper arms, the triceps on the floor, back of the arms, and the inside of the wrists and the hands. So it potentially feels quite strengthening, quite a lot of effort. And the spinal roll might come a little bit less naturally. We'll compare it with a different way in a moment. But How does this feel to you? Very strengthening for the back line of the body. And then when you next come back down, arms relaxed, maybe lifting your shoulders up, giving them a little wriggle. Maybe let your knees come in towards you for a moment and having a little bit of a wriggle through the lower back, as if you're sort of scratching the middle back on the floor. A bit of wriggling around. What's a good way to describe it? It reminds me a bit of a beetle that's lying on its back and it's trying to turn back over. A little bit of a wriggle after that, a really kind of static, fairly effortful bridge pose. Letting everything loosen up a bit. And then bringing the feet down. And then for the next bridge, leaving your arms out to the side with your palms turned up. So hands about hip level. So we're now going to have a go at bridge pose with the arms quite passive and relaxed. So mainly relying on the feet, and then a sort of passive other end of the bridge that's simply releasing into the ground. So pressing down through the feet, letting the pelvis tilt, rolling up. How does this one feel in comparison? Both have their merits. The first one is kind of more toning for the upper back, toning for the arms. This one might promote a bit more spinal flexibility, mobility. Spine in itself isn't so flexible. The muscles in between are a bit more mobility, maybe. And then coming back down and resting again. And for this rest, you might like to straighten your legs for a moment. And then bending your knees again. And then we'll see how it would be to interlace our fingers and rest the head in the hands. You could do this with your arms at shoulder level if for any reason it's not comfortable to bring your hands back, or you could do one hand under your head. So a few options here if you've got any shoulder limitations, stuff going on with your arms. And first we'll come into like a little sit up. So on an exhale, bringing the elbows towards your head and then looking into your knees. Breathing in, coming back down. Coming to rest. So with one hand, it would look like this. You've got a frozen shoulder or something. If you've got a problem with both shoulders, or it feels too asymmetrical to you to do the one hand, you can actually just move your head a little harder on the neck. It's also doable. And make sure that you're really relaxing your neck afterwards, especially if you're not supporting with both hands. So coming back from that little roll up, to completely resting for a breath or two. And then if it feels okay, you can combine this movement with a low slung bridge. So you'd be coming up into a low bridge, hips just off the floor, and then adding the sit-up movement into your knees and coming back down. Rolling the hips back down too and relax. If this feels quite intense, maybe just do about 3 or so. I've done this movement before. Start with a low number of repetitions or rest longer in between. You're now strengthening the front and the back of the body. You're getting the core muscles to work together in an interesting way. Really useful for building strength. Strength and coordination in the whole body. If it feels good, maybe do a couple more, doing about 6 or 8. You can go back to just the sit-up or just bridge, whatever feels useful for you. And when you've done whatever works for you, up to about 8 repetitions, having a little rest. You might like to give your knees a hug, stretch your legs up if you're really feeling it in the hamstrings or your lower back. If there's that desire to extend the front of the hips, then rest with your legs long. Noticing how your body is in resting, really having that satisfying feeling of having done some strength work, built up some resilience in your body by working on the strength of your back and this kind of vulnerable part of the front of the body, the belly.